Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
Is that how I usually say it?
Not at all.
Okay. Welcome to the Scaryish podcast. I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz. We've been doing this for over 100 episodes. I don't even remember how we start these things. Okay, what we do. Adam, tell us.
We do stuff and things. What we do is have conversations about paranormal, spooky, sometimes true crime topics on these Scaryish episodes, which is super exciting. We also have storytime episodes. Robin, why don't you tell the folks what we do on the storytime episodes?
Storytime episodes are separate from these, but if you want to listen to real life stories...
What is this voice?
If you want to listen to stories that we've received from our listeners, our spooky friends, and they've shared with us their paranormal stories, their supernatural stories, their spiritual stories, horrible night terrors that lead into real life things. I don't know. There's a lot. And we have a lot of those episodes. We almost have 100.
Yeah, we're at 98.
Episodes.
The next episode will be 99, which, by the way, will be out on Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern, because we are not going to be recording on New Year's Eve, because we are actually going to go do something on New Year's Eve, and we're not going to do it on New Year's Day either. So Thursday is the day that you can find us on twitch.tv/Scaryish podcast and youtube.com/Scaryish. But yes, that is what the Storytime episodes are all about. My brain is just poisoned right now with stupid bullshit. Don't blame me.
Okay. Yeah, so if you folks want some extra content, that's a little bit more for you to listen to. Anyway, let's get into what we're going to cover. What are you doing?
Let's get started. Everything's so thrown off right now. I don't even know what I'm doing. So this week, I'm going to be covering Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. What are you going to be covering?
I'm going to cover Flatwoods Monster, and I've told myself I was going to cover it ages ago, and I never did, and I keep putting it off, and I finally did it. So
Right on. That's exciting. And I believe I'm going to be going first this week. I'm pretty excited because this week I really wanted to do a place, like a location, not just any location, but somewhere that I could see us visiting. So I began to do some Googling on haunted locations around places that we tend to be near or travel to often. And lo and behold, I came across some stories about one particular place that, as it turns out, I could have gone to back when I was a youngling. And no lie, this place was only a 55-minute drive from the house I grew up in. I Googled it, and I never, ever heard of this place growing up at all. So for those of you who are from my old neck of the woods, this one may just pique your interest a little bit more than normal. Garrett, this means you. Go check it out. Send us pictures. Take Mariana and Johnny K with you so he doesn't disappear. And without further shout-outs and shameless plugs, dear listeners, I present to you Bachelor's Grove Cemetery.
Is it just like a whole bunch of single people buried there?
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Not really. Not at all. So to start, I'm not going to describe to you what a cemetery is. We all know what a cemetery is at this point.
It's where you bury your pets and then they come back to life.
Actually, I wrote it's where they make cement. Duh.
That's the cemetery.
So I will, however, tell you where this particular cemetery, which is how I wrote it in my next bullet point, is located. It's in Orland Park, Illinois, which is right outside Chicago, Illinois. Some folks would even say it's part of Chicago. There's this, Civil War going on in Chicago, not the actual one. But there's this thing going on in Chicago where folks are always saying that you're not actually from Chicago, regardless of where you're from in Chicago. So I don't know if Orland Park is disqualified. I'm not going to get into it. It actually resides within the Forest Preserves of Cook County, because there is a very large spot called the Forest Preserves of Cook County, which has a bunch of forested areas, specifically right south of, or maybe actually part of, the Rubio Woods. And now, somewhere around 1830 to 1840, a man named Samuel Everdon purchased this plot of land from the government. And while standing there observing this choice piece of nature, he thought to himself, you know what would go really nicely here? Dead bodies. And some folks in certain websites say his last name was Everdeen, which has a nicer ring to it, thanks to, obviously, Katniss Everdeen.
Oh, that girl on fire!
It's untrue, though, because the man was named Samuel Everdon. Thank you, Cook County Archives. I was able to dig up this person's actual existence. However, there is misspellings of his name across a bunch of different documentation. It's most often spelled Everdon. You don't care. But the point is, Everdon Cemetery is what this was called originally. So if you've heard about Everdon or Everdeen Cemetery, it is the same one. And it's really weird to name a cemetery after your surname. Like, We had a basketball coach in high school who got a gym named after him. And sometimes, like, famous folks get streets named after them. But it's like, who buys a cemetery and names it after themselves? You know what I mean? It's just weird. It's also speculated that a woman was the person who bought the land, and her name was Corintha Everdeen, which definitely sounds way more Hunger Games-ish.
Right? It totally is like an offshoot of Katniss Everdeen.
Right, she would be volunteering for Katniss if that went down. She also existed, and this place basically was named after whoever really was the person that bought it. So we'll just consider this a choose-your-own-adventure at this point. The land itself, however, was split up into 82 lots, which divided up was a total of 200 graves. It got used actually even before it was officially opened. To make a really long story short, there was once a canal dug from Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River so you could have a more direct route for trading things. And there isn't any official record of the folks who were used to dig this canal because they mainly just used immigrants who they treated like shit. And so sometimes because of the conditions and the danger of the work they were doing, immigrants would die while completing this work, and they were essentially just buried wherever they could find nearby because they just kind of discarded their lives.
That's sad.
And it's said that multiple immigrants during the digging of the, I think it's called the Illinois to Michigan Canal.
They should just name it the Mimi Canal. From Michigan to Mississippi, it's like, Mimi.
That's awful. Anyways.
It's an amazing name. They're going to name it. I'm going to hit them up and be like, hey, we're naming this the Mimi Canal.
Are you?
Yeah.
That's weird because it's filled in. It doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, lame!
So, anyways, some of the folks who dug the canal when it was actually being used died during it and were said to have been buried here in this cemetery. What's really interesting about this is that the canal was a really shitty idea in the first place because during heavy rainfall, the area that was around it, some of the water was already contaminated via pollution, even in the mid to late 1800s.
Gross.
Because human beings are just sort of awful in general. And that contaminated water would run into the canal, and the canal would actually run into Lake Michigan, not like the opposite direction. So all of a sudden you'd have all this water in Lake Michigan that was polluted, and it was right next to the intake for the city's water. So it was just like a horrible situation. They had to get a bunch of engineers to sort it out, and they wound up filling in the canal. But no one cares about that. We're talking about a cemetery and dead bodies and stuff like that.
Okay.
So the place opened for business technically in 1836 and started selling off lots so that dead folks can be laid to rest within its premises, I guess. Now, to picture this cemetery, don't picture anything fancy. It's a fairly cleared plot of land. And I say fairly cleared because there's still trees dotting the landscaping, which is on fairly even ground. It's a little bit hilly, but nothing too ridiculous. It has smaller headstones, nothing too ornate, that aren't in very straight rows, really. And if you want to get an idea of what this looks like, and my words aren't painting a mind picture for you, you can always go to our Instagram, because there's going to be pictures up there.
Sweet.
So the headstones aren't really in straight rows or anything like that. The ground does have greenery on it. It's not so overgrown that it's covering the headstones, but it's enough where it's not, like, well-kempt, so to speak.
Okay.
So it's like something that you'd wander into and be like, oh, wow, this is a really old graveyard. It's not shitty, but it's definitely not nice. So picture that in your mind. The clearing itself is surrounded by forested area because it is in this forest preserve, so there is a measure of privacy to it, which I do kind of like. Because if you're being laid to rest, you'd kind of want to be laid to rest someplace relatively quiet. So that is nice. At the back of the property, there's a fairly large pond. Now, picture a pond that has that weird green algae that looks like soup skin on the top, where it just
soup
looks really
skin?
gross. You know when you let your soup sit for too long and it gets like a film on the top of it? It's almost like it grew a skin because it's a sentient being. And
Isn't
it's
that
like,
just clear?
what do you mean clear? No, it has like, it's darker and it's gross, but like when you have a pond that's like stagnant water, that algae gets really green and it basically forms like a rug on the top of the water, and it just looks really, really gross. So picture that, and again, if you want to see it, just go to our Instagram, because I found a really, really good picture of what it looks like. It's like something was covering it with green slime.
What's worse, soup skin or runny eggs?
Runny eggs, without a doubt. Runny eggs is exactly what I picture anytime I need to regurgitate, because it's just so fucking gross to think about. So directly behind that pond is a road. The road is West 143rd Street, which is also known as the Midlothian Turnpike. So if you know where I'm talking about, you're like, I know exactly where this is. most importantly, it's not a hard drive to get to it for most area around it. So we're going to get to the Turnpike part of this in a little bit.
Is the Turnpike also haunted?
Kind of. Actually, there's supposed to be another story that I could not locate that a Chicago native had told for a really long time that took place on the Turnpike.
Interesting.
But I don't have that within here because I didn't want to try and pull it and wind up, overlapping two topics. But we're going to get to some fairly interesting stuff, so don't worry. I have some good stuff in here. Not all the lots in the cemetery sold, even to this day. I think they stopped burying people there in the 50s, late 60s, maybe even as late as the 80s. It's a fairly out-of-the-way cemetery, and it is in the middle of a nature preserve, so it's not shocking that people weren't lining up around the block to be buried there. Regardless of who it was that bought this cemetery, like I was talking about in the beginning, we're not exactly sure who it was. What is known is that eventually they died, and the plot of land would be renamed after the surrounding area, which for a period of time was known as Bachelor's Grove. So that's where it gets the name Bachelor's Grove Cemetery from. Not because it's just filled with a bunch of bachelors who are buried there. So,
all right. I mean, it'd be cool if that was a thing, but,
Singles only cemetery. Nice. Ladies bury for free. I don't think they actually have places like that. Well, they're not serving drinks there, Robin. It's a fucking cemetery.
But okay, from what I've learned from Beetlejuice, I mean, you could meet people on the other side.
Wow, that's true. I need that handbook, though, for the recently deceased so I can learn more about it. All right. This place became popular in the early 1900s, and not because of the spooky stuff that we're going to get into. So, do you remember that whole road behind the property? And I was like, more on that later. Well, later is right now. So, I mean, there wasn't like a really big delay at all. It was like 2 minutes. But anyway, so in the 1920s, there was this thing known as Prohibition. And many of you know what that was. For those of you who don't,
no booze.
I don't understand how you don't. But basically, everyone got a bug up their ass collectively and said, no more booze.
I don't think everybody.
Enough folks where it was able to pass all legislation needed and become the 18th Amendment. So the United States of America was officially dry from like 1920 till 1933.
And then, 1934, people were just like, let's get wasted.
Well, they overturned it, and yeah, that's exactly what happened. It was like a massive, massive party.
Is that like the time of The Great Gatsby, no?
I'm not sure. I've never read The Great Gatsby.
I've never read it either.
Anyways.
I just know that gif of Leonardo DiCaprio.
Doing the cheers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good gif. I'm going to be posting that everywhere tomorrow, which when you're listening to this is the New Year's Eve, unless you didn't listen to it the day it came out.
I've already drawn something, too, for our Happy New Year.
Have you?
Yeah, I have.
Right on. That's awesome. I posted a D&D, two crits next to each other, and it's like, may your 2020 be blessed.
It's like, what is it? Naturally Successful.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. It's good. I clearly loved it because I forgot what it was. Anyways, as you can probably guess, during Prohibition, most Americans, despite voting for the folks who put this into place and would keep it in place for 12 years, were like, hey, fuck you, buddy. Like, they were not going to give up their alcohol, so they just found ways of getting shit-faced sneakily. Some made booze and beer at home. You'd hear about bathtubs or stills in the basement, stuff like that. Some went out and found places that were fronts or fake businesses that actually sold alcohol on the down low, known as speakeasies, which I think we've all heard of. Pretty badass name. There's a lot of themed bars nowadays that pretend they're speakeasies, so you have to have, like, the proper slang in order to get a drink, and people dress all old-timey, like from the 20s.
Yeah.
Which, in 24 hours, is going to be the 20s again, and I'm super excited about it. So where did they get their booze from if booze was illegal in the United States? Well, of course, organized crime. And organized crime basically just replaced the alcohol industry and how it was handled, like, logistically, when it was legal with just illegal product, but they had to do it sneakily because they weren't allowed to be doing it. But atop of being sneaky, they're also very, very deadly. And it's not like now where someone says, I like Budweiser, and someone else says, I like Miller Lite, and then some fart sniffer is like, well, I love this new hoppy IPA brewed exclusively by field mice and blah, 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 blah.
You gotta add in the Pabst Blue Ribbon people.
The PBR people? No, they're passed out because they're drinking trash beer.
Oh my ass.
But back then, it was like, I get my booze from this one gangster because if I don't, he'll fucking kill me. Also, the competition that I could buy from aren't there anymore because he fucking killed them already. Especially in Chicago, which is where Al Capone was based out of.
All I'm thinking of now is Goodfellas, where he's just like, fuck you, pay me.
It's such a good scene in that movie, right? Aren't you happy I made you watch that?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
So Capone and his bro dudes, they basically ran the show in Chicago. Their business was booze and murder, and business was doing all right. So why do I bring this up when I'm supposed to be talking about a cemetery? Because everything that a person can do, no matter what it is, typically has some follow-up task associated with it. And when you're out there murdering, sometimes you can't just leave the body there. Like maybe you're sending a message or maybe you don't care about the person. But in a lot of cases, you got to take the body with you and hide it or you're going to get caught. Like in a place, I don't know, that's an unreasonably deep pond, perhaps right off the side of the road, where you can literally just slow down your car and chuck old Nicky Three Balls over the rail or whatever your nickname for him was.
Where did you get Nicky Three Balls?
I don't know. I was just thinking about my friend Nick, and it just fell into place. Don't ask me why.
Oh my!
So, while this is unconfirmed, it is a very widespread rumor that's been believed for a very long time that the pond behind Bachelor's Grove Cemetery was not just used for it, but was a popular dumping spot for organized crime of the Prohibition era to ditch murder weapons and victims.
So that water must have looked fucking disgusting.
It's gross, it's super, super dark, and the pond is supposed to be, like, unreasonably deep as well. And it's not shocking that after, like, a decade or two of this nonsense, people began to see some odd things in the cemetery. So we have random murder victims being dropped off next to a cemetery in the pond, and now shit starts to pop off. Reports started to come in of odd lights being seen in the cemetery, in the woods surrounding the cemetery, and over the pond by folks who had passed by on the interstate or people who were visiting the forest preserve. They were most often seen, and are still often seen, as red or blue lights. More on that later. The weirdest part about these lights... What's that?
Are they popos?
I don't know, because the weirdest part about these lights is that they're kind of wispy. They're not exactly orbs. And
Did
they
you say
don't...
Quispy?
I hate you so much, dude. And they don't only appear at night, like most orbs do. Like Moody Light, like the place that I've actually been to. They appear in the middle of the day sometimes. Just random wispy lights. Don't say Quispy again, or I'll just cancel the fucking show forever.
Okay, go.
They flash, they blink, they strobe, or sometimes they just grow incredibly bright and then disappear. Sometimes they have been seen navigating their way around the headstones of the cemetery, almost as if they're like looking at the names on the tombstones.
Ooh, that's kind of cool.
One particularly, I wrote particular, but it's supposed to be particularly. One particularly frightening story occurred when a couple ventured to the cemetery for a little bit of a ghost hunt, maybe some bangarang as well. It is unconfirmed. When exploring the cemetery, they noticed one of these lights in the distance, seemingly weaving through the headstones. And almost as if the light noticed them, it began to move closer closer to them, picking up speed as it approached them. And it sped towards them, and they claimed that they felt a physical force knock them down when it reached them.
Oh my God.
Before abruptly disappearing.
That's terrifying.
I would like to take a moment to advise you I have moved past the historical part of my topic, and this could all be bullshit. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt. So there is another story of a farmer who was nearby plowing his land, which was near the cemetery. And something spooked the farmer's horse, and the horse just took off. And it was dragging the plow behind it, and the farmer was trying to calm the animal, and he wound up getting wrapped up in the reins.
Oh, no.
And the horse was running wildly from whatever had scared it, and tragically it wound up plunging into the waters of the pond. So the horse was unable to escape from the depths of the pond, and he and, or she, I don't know, then the horse and the farmer would be dragged under and die. This story is actually an origin story for one of the notable apparitions that is seen around the cemetery, and I'll tell you what that apparition is, because it said that 2 Cook County Forest Patrol officers, I've seen it said that this happened in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, but the story is always the same regardless of the date, were making their way through the area and spotted something that shocked and disturbed both of them. They claimed that at the edge of the pond they saw a creature start to crawl out of the water. As it started to crawl out more and more, they realized it was a horse.
How does it crawl out? What does it look like when it crawls out?
I don't know. What does your mind's eye tell you, Robin?
It looks like a creepy demonic girl with hair in front of its face.
I picture a horse's head covered in like that nasty green shit that's on top of the water, and like dark water, and then like its front legs being super long, like crawling out. It would essentially look like a giant spider, like the first 5 minutes of The Witcher.
Oh my gosh.
When you see this thing at first, eventually it starts to crawl out enough where they realized it was a horse. Once it fully emerged from the pond, they realized it was dragging behind it a plow, and as the plow was removed from the lake as well, there was a farmer that was strapped to the fucking plow. According to the internet, which never lies, the horse and farmer came so close to them because once the horse got out, it just started trotting along, that as they passed, they were able to see this look on this farmer's face of this lifeless, horrific visage of agony, probably from the drowning. The horse, plow, and farmer passed the two of them by before abruptly disappearing into the woods. They were so shocked about this, it's one of the more famous stories
That's crazy.
about this cemetery. Which, of course, if you go to the right website, marks this as the most haunted cemetery in the world.
Yes,
because that's what they have to say about literally every place that exists. What's kind of cool about this place is there's like Yelp reviews and TripAdvisor reviews up
about the
ass.
ghosts?
Yeah, and it's all about things that people have seen, and there's so many, and it's like rated 5 stars everywhere. And everyone's like, this place is fucking haunted. It's super creepy, don't go there. So let's keep going, because there's a lot of stuff in this cemetery. One of, if not the most famous spook, specter, or ghost of the cemetery is known as, quote, the White Lady. She has another nickname, Madonna of Bachelor's Grove, or the White Madonna. She has a million nicknames. It's really weird. Not that Madonna, although she is
It's the religious Madonna, right?
I guess. Apparently this one is very good at striking poses, though. Apparently there's nothing to it. I had to get that joke in because you interrupted it, so.
I don't get it.
I hate you so much. I hate you so much. How do you not know Madonna?
I know Like a Virgin.
You apparently don't know Vogue, because that's what I just quoted.
Oh, okay.
Anyways. The White Lady is said to be a full-floating, full-torso vaporous apparition.
I hate you. Okay, so before...
I don't know what she's talking about. Anything that comes out of her mouth right now is a lie.
Before we recorded, I swear to you, he watched the beginning of the Ghostbusters movie, like the intro of it. Where
it's called Ghostbusters, not the Ghostbusters movie.
I don't care. Whatever you say, but he was literally listening to this person say this line.
Dr. Ray Stantz?
Yes.
Yeah.
Multiple times, so he could get...
Just twice.
So he could get word for word exactly what he said.
Full floating, full torso. Fuck, it's not right, is it?
I don't know. I don't watch the movie.
Free floating, full torso vaporous apparition, I'm pretty sure.
I was just like,
is the accurate
what are
line.
you listening to over there? Because there was a woman screaming, and it was just...
Well, at least anyone who's seen Ghostbusters can now picture what the White Lady looks like. And it should be exciting, right? That's an exciting thing, a full torso vaporous apparition. But not really, because she's said to be seen sitting on or near the Fulton family headstone, which exists. It's an actual headstone. It'll be on the Instagram. She is sobbing loudly whenever she is seen, and if she notices anyone pass by, she asks them woefully if they have seen her infant daughter. Which is super
really sad. But you know what? A lot of these women ghosts that are crying in cemeteries are always looking for their kids.
Even sadder, there is an actual headstone in the cemetery that says only infant daughter.
Shut up.
No joke. I'm thinking that if this one is made up, they saw the headstone and were like, ooh, that's super sad, and then made the legend up from infant daughter and worked backwards.
Oh.
She is also seen at times during a full moon wandering through the cemetery holding an infant. Apparently, this sighting is very rare and only happens when the Martin prophecy is fulfilled. The moon must hit your eye like a big pizza pie.
Oh my god, I get it now. The Martin prophecy.
Dean Martin, did you get that one? You don't know Madonna, but you know Dean Martin. Okay, we're starting to figure out Robin here. 108 episodes in. Apparently, she was photographed in 1991 by a lady named Judy Huff Feltz. The picture is on our Instagram. It's very famous. They put it in the Chicago Sun-Times in 1991. Any respectable book that talks about paranormal stuff, that talks about this graveyard, this cemetery, has this photo in there. Because it's supposed to be authentic. And it is... When I looked at it...
It just looks like a woman sitting on it.
It looks like an actual person just sitting there. So you folks check it out. Let us know what you think. So if you decide you're actually going to go to this place, you should be aware of someone called the caretaker. The caretaker tends to be seen on the path what's your fucking brilliant rafflecopter over there about this time?
Rafflecopter? No, I'm just thinking of like a wrestler, you know what I mean?
The Undertaker?
There's an Undertaker. This was just called the Caretaker. This is...
You're just the worst.
Sorry.
Andrew is shaking his head so fucking hard right now, like, this makes no sense.
No, but these are the things that go on in my head that make me giggle to myself.
Okay. Anyway. Glad you let us in. Glad you let us peek behind the curtain of your brain, and it's messy back there.
Yeah, it is messy back there.
So the caretaker tends to be seen on the path leading to the cemetery entrance, which I believe, from doing some like Google Maps research, you can drive to this place, you have to park, and then you have to walk a distance to get to the cemetery. And as you're walking, he is sometimes seen there. He is described as being in a bad mood all the time. He appears to be in the later years of his life, or death, whatever, like 75 plus, and is carrying a lantern and a shotgun. And he typically tells people to fuck right off. And will occasionally...
Does he literally say, you can fuck right off?
He tells them to leave. In one way, shape, or form. And then sometimes he'll actually chase them out if he's really angry.
That's terrifying.
It is. And so here's what's funny is that there was a place that was supposed to be haunted when I was growing up in the Boondies. Did I say it right this time? Or is it Boonies?
Boonies.
Boonies? In the Boonies. In the middle of fucking nowhere in Northwest Indiana. People kept talking about it at school. So we got a bunch of people together and we're like, we're going to go. We drove out there. We found this house. It's creepy. It's this big blue farmhouse, and in the backyard is this dilapidated like barn, and supposedly someone murdered their family in the barn. And then there's a fence, like this picket fence, and they said that when the cops came by, they found the heads of the family on the pickets.
That's not real.
So we were like, this is probably bullshit. We're gonna go check it out. We got to the side of the road, we're looking around, we're thinking about hopping the fence. Some old dude, this is 100% true, with a shotgun was on the property and came and confronted us and told us to fuck off. And I was pretty...
Did he literally say to fuck off?
He told us to get the fuck out of there. And I asked him straight up, there's a bunch of people, like we're in high school, there's a bunch of people that always say this place is haunted. Is it haunted? He was really sad. He's like, no, my family lives here. You kids keep coming out here and disturbing us all the time. Like, you have to stop doing this. So we apologized to him and we left. Now, reading this, knowing that there's someone named the Caretaker who's an old man that carries a shotgun and tells people to fuck off, I sincerely wish I would have tried to shake that dude's hand.
Oh, to see if he was a ghost?
To see if he was actually real. So if you go there, I'm just saying you should probably try and shake his hand. And if he doesn't shake your hand, he is 100% totes a ghost. Or he's real. Either way, ghost or angry dude with a shotgun, you should probably leave and just try again at a different time, because you don't want any of that, no matter which side of the spectrum it is, whether it's paranormal or 100% normal crazy dude with a shotgun. It's dangerous either way. Or you could take, like, Werther's original butterscotch candies and like throw them into the woods, because he'll chase them. Like, I'm pretty sure
this is not like some type of Japanese legend. Throw competition.
I'm just saying, anyone over 70 is compelled to chase those things, ghost or not a ghost, because every old person I've ever been around over 70 is always smelling like butterscotch and has a million Werther's around them. That might just be my grandparents and older family, but I swear to God, that's like a consistent thing.
I grew up with Werther, so
there you go. Confirmed. 100% confirmed by Robin. He is the caretaker, however, occasionally accompanied by his companion, a black Doberman pinscher.
I knew it. I knew there was going to be a dog.
Who is apparently enormous, growling, and angry. Did it
have 3 heads?
No, just 1. It is said that even if you leave, the dog will follow you all the way back to 143rd before disappearing. So the caretaker chases you out. He's like, get the fuck out of here, and you leave, and then he disappears. The dog will follow you all the way back to the turnpike. That's how intense this dog is. So if you see a giant Doberman pinscher, again, you should probably just go regardless of whether or not it's a ghost dog or a real dog. So I don't have anything like the Werther's candies for you on that one. I don't know what to do for a Doberman pinscher that's super angry. Maybe throw a milk bone or
pet it.
A child. I don't know what you can lure phantom Dobermans with, so I'm just going to guess a child. And I'm pretty sure if you throw a child in the cemetery, the white lady will catch it and be like, interception, and then run away with said child because she's looking for hers. So,
interception.
There is apparently new stuff being seen there still. In 2009, someone went to take a photograph of the white lady, and wound up finding something else. She, of course, didn't get a picture of what she saw because she was setting up her equipment, but when she was setting it up, it was pointed at the Fulton headstone so that she could catch the white lady, and she heard a noise coming from a different direction, in particular, the Shields family plot. When she turned around, she saw some form of ghost that had a yellow aura, and it was dressed in Prohibition-era clothing, wandering around, and shortly after being noticed, he vanished. And since this sighting was reported in 2009, multiple folks have begun claiming that they see a yellow light in the woods now as well, in addition to the red and the blue. Now, I will say, I don't know if you can hear my dubious face, but I have it on right now because that really feels like people are saying they see something, even though they don't see something because someone else said they saw something, which is kind of how this all feeds into each other. Like,
that's how legends work.
It's how it like feeds off of itself. So that's something new that's popped up recently. I found other legends as well, but most are like one-offs from the popularity it's gaining yet again. Like, there's something called the Red Skyrocket, which sounds like a dog's boner, but apparently, apparently it's like a red light that flies up and down the entrance path, and folks have reported seeing it when they're trying to reach the cemetery. Sightings of a two-headed ghost, not the dog, but a two-headed man ghost, have become more frequent recently, although this seems to me like most likely a kid or a teenager or another ghost hunter that just takes a mask and just decides he's going to mess with people who are showing up to see something scary.
Yeah.
So the weirdest thing that is seen, and it is seen often in quotes, because I could find a lot of people that say they saw this, is something that doesn't sound like any paranormal sighting I've ever heard of before. No orbs, no women in white, no ghost children. It's reported that people who walk up the path to go to the cemetery see an old, beautiful 2-story farmhouse in the distance through the trees as they approach the cemetery. And it's supposedly in immaculate condition. It looks just like the perfect home that most people would like daydream about. The closer you get, the further away the house seems to become, and the house is said to be sited in different locations around the forest. So it's not like, once you go through the thing, look to the right, look to the northwest. It can be seen on either side. It changes up where it's seen, but it always looks the same. Like, the description always comes out to be the same thing. There's a porch swing on the front porch. There's a lantern in the window. There's big wooden columns on this porch that wraps around the house. And the description is almost always universally agreed upon by the folks who've seen it. Again, they might just be copying someone else's description. But along with the detail that the closer they were walking to it, the further away it would seem to get, until all of a sudden it was gone. And there's no house out there at all. And no one knows why folks keep seeing this. So part of that legend now has become that anyone who can actually approach the house and have it not shrink in the distance can get to the house. But once you get to it, you will never be seen again. You can never come back because it will disappear and you will disappear with it. So this one is like super original, and I really appreciate that. If it is bullshit, it's like the first time in 108 episodes I've heard about like a disappearing ghost house,
Yeah.
And it's not like a dilapidated, scary place. It's this like perfect, beautiful home that you would want to approach just to like admire it. And if you are able to approach it, then you're gone forever. So especially, I don't know, if there's an old man with a shotgun chasing you or a dog trying to murder you, you might run towards this place that looks like sanctuary. So I thought that was super interesting, so I wanted to save that for last. So maybe leave that place in particular alone. If you go, though, take pictures and or videos and or go Facebook Live, please. In 2010, Zach Bagels and co. went to the cemetery, and unfortunately, no, certain parties were not dragged into that pond forever. It did increase in popularity and visits since then, which of course increased the amount of vandalism it's undergone and general mistreatment of the cemetery. Some of the photos I saw, there was just garbage fucking everywhere, and like volunteers have to go out to clean it up because people apparently don't understand that that's how you make ghosts angrier if they actually exist, is to leave shit on their graves. The good that did come from that is that it was treated like such shit for 4 years that in 2014, resources had to be allocated to the cleanup of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, and it is now maintained and landscaped and has trash cleaned up that is left behind by stupid people with no respect. So if you go, be one of those people that is curious and respectful, And make sure you take plenty of pictures to share with the spooky friends. I'm going to go ahead and say that the next time we are back in the Chicagoland area, I think we may have to take a quick detour to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery.
No, I'm good.
No, I think we're going to do this, and I'm pretty excited about it. So that is what I have for Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. I hope you enjoyed it.
Cool. Thanks.
No problem.
Nice ghosties.
So before we move into Robin's topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
And we're back. I feel like it's been quite a while since I've covered a cryptid, so I decided that I'd get on that this week. We're going over to good old West Virginia, where the country roads take you to, apparently, because that's where you belong. I don't know. What are the lyrics?
Wow, you just fucking put
anyway,
your
so I'd honestly never heard of this creature before I started playing Fallout 76.
Oh my god.
And I know all the controversy over it being whether it's like a good game or whatever, but I've put a truckload of hours into it, and it holds a little space, like a little place in my special place in my cryptid loving heart.
Aw.
So, because I mean, there's Mothman, there's Flatwoods Monster, there's a couple other ones too that you come across, but this creature is definitely going to be something.
Mirelurks, whatever they're called.
Oh yeah, Mirelurks. This creature though is definitely something for Adam's alien loving heart.
No shit.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited.
Good.
You had my attention.
At
now
aliens?
You have my interest.
I don't get it. Is that from a line from a movie?
Yeah, it is. It doesn't
what
matter.
Movie is it?
I mean, it's like, aside from being a line from a movie, it's just something that I could say that 100% would represent how I feel.
Okay, it's just like...
Not everything I say is a line from a movie, despite the fact that this one was a line from a movie. You don't have to get it. It's just something I fucking said.
Okay. The Flatwoods Monster, also known as the Braxton County Monster, Frametown Monster, or even the Phantom of Flatwoods, got a lot of names there.
That is a lot of names.
Has been sighted in the forest of Flatwoods and Frametown, West Virginia. So, the big sighting, the main thing that incited the whole thing, on September 12th, 1952, at around 7:15 p.m., 3 boys between the ages of 10 and 13, Edward and Fred May, as well as their friend Tommy Heyer, saw what they claimed to have been a bright object that streaked across the sky. And it landed on a nearby farmer, G. Bailey Fisher's house. Not his house. It didn't land on his house. It landed on his property. And the boys returned to the home of Kathleen May, the May boys' mother, where they then reported having seen a UFO crash up in the hills. So the boys and their Kathleen, they grabbed a few of the local kids and a 17-year-old West Virginia National Guardsman, Eugene Lemon. So he's young, but I mean, he's in the National Guard. You know, some people would say that deserves a little respect.
Absolutely. So the lady they grabbed, what's her name? Kathleen May?
Kathleen May, yeah.
We refer to as Mountain Mama for the rest of the story.
Mountain Mama. Are we just
That's an actual lyric
That's a
from
lyric
the song.
from that song. Are we just going to make the song lyric random?
Yeah.
All right.
So they're going to take the country roads to the crash site.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, Eugene Lemon went with them to find whatever it was that they might have seen. Lemon's dog, Ricky, while they were walking there, ran out of sight of the party and then began barking. It went off. Nobody could see it.
It's like a scene from a horror movie.
Yeah, they could hear it start barking. Moments later, it returned with its tail between its legs. So it clearly came across something
that scared it.
And was not happy. When the group reached the top of the hill, upon which they could see whatever crashed, they saw a large, pulsating, quote-unquote, ball of fire. So, on this hill, they just see this thing 50 feet away from them, which is about 15 meters, a big, pulsating ball of fire. I don't even know how you would...
When I hear pulsating, it's like it's beating.
Right.
You know, like a heart. Like
but
you could see like the light flashing from the center.
If it's a fire, you know what I mean? Like, how does it fire pulse? It's so interesting to me that they reported it as pulsating. They also reported having seen or smelled a mist that made their eyes and noses burn. And I guess it was kind of like a miasma of sorts or something like that, and it made them all feel sick. A number of the original party that went to look for the creature did report suffering similar symptoms to each other that persisted for some time after they'd been exposed. So they reported irritation of the nose and swelling of the throat, Lemon suffered from vomiting and convulsions throughout the night and had difficulties with his throat for several weeks afterwards.
Wow.
And a doctor that treated a number of them is reported to have said that they were symptoms similar to those exposed to mustard gas, which I thought was really strange.
That's super scary, too. Mustard gas is horribly deadly.
Yeah. So I thought that was crazy. But then other people were like, well, it could just be hysteria, you know. It's just something super scary and traumatic, so now they're feeling
That's
sick.
like when I covered the quote-unquote toxic woman who had a bunch of medical workers examine her and try and save her life before she passed away.
Right.
And the doctor who was in charge of it and made the most contact with her, like, fell into an unexplained coma.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's just hysteria. It's like, that is horseshit. It's an unexplainable medical phenomenon. You don't know what happened. You can't just blame it on hysteria.
Yeah. So as these people were checking out this fireball, Lemon noticed 2 small lights to the left of it under a nearby oak tree. And so he moved his flashlight over to shine on whatever he'd just seen, right? And it revealed what we know to be the Flatwoods monster. Some reports claim that Lemon himself screamed and then fell backwards at the sight of this 10-foot-tall creature with a blood-red body and a green face that seemed to glow, which is crazy.
It's pretty badass. It's like something out of Doctor Who.
What? No. You're just saying that because I showed you the picture
It's probably
earlier.
why it was in my subconscious, yes.
So, upon being found out, the creature let out a shrill hissing noise and glided towards them before being distracted by the red light of the fire, which allowed the group to run away without having to be mauled to death by this strange alien being.
So the creature was mesmerized by the wreckage of his own ship?
It must be, you know what I mean?
He's like, my wallet was in there, damn it.
It's more like...
I gotta go to the space DMV now.
It's a high-pitched hissing, so it's more like, hee, I don't know.
Wow. So this was the most annoying creature in the universe.
Anyway.
That's a different creature.
So some say that it didn't glide or walk, though. So it more like bobs up and down through the air, hovering above the ground.
What sound effect do you think it made, Robin?
What? Well, like the...
While it hovered. Yeah, I think...
Yeah.
Like, it moves like with its sound wave almost. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, okay. We're on the same wavelength.
We are. Wow, that was a pretty good pun.
Thanks.
That was the best pun of that was the best pun of the decade. Congratulations.
Thanks.
You got in just under the wire.
Okay. John Gibson, a high school freshman at the time of the incident, knew everyone who was involved and said that one of the boys even peed his pants. That's how scared he was. And I mean, this could just be a guy being a dick and trying to make fun of this kid.
Right, he peed his pants.
But I at the same time, I believe that seeing something like that when you're that young, they'd actually be totally terrified. You know, if the guy that's in the National Guard screamed and fell backwards.
But you don't know if he screamed like a badass, like, Brah!
No,
and then he fell backwards.
I've heard you yell from watching Haunting at Hill House. That's not what you sounded like when you screamed.
I was like, oh!
Yeah, that's what I imagine Eugene sounded like.
It's fine. That's still pretty badass.
All right. So what does this thing look like, you might wonder? First reports have it at about 10 feet tall and 4 feet wide. So this thing was thick.
With 2 C's? God damn.
No, more like 3. That's 4 feet, yo.
4 feet is very thick.
So just imagine those dimensions. That's huge. It's said to be robot-esque, like it was a spaceship or a robot suit more so than an actual living creature of any type. It had a cowl in the shape of, in essence, a spade like the shape on the playing cards.
So you're saying he was more machine than man.
Yes, he was more machine than man.
You know what that's from?
Is that like RoboCop or something?
Star Wars.
Oh.
Keep going. You're failing this episode.
This isn't the movie podcast. You can get the fuck out of here. Okay?
Get a D- right now.
So, cowl, shape of a spade, like a big spade around its head. If you guys want to check the Instagram out, we're going to have pictures. It had 2 green and orange glowing eyes that were described as portholes the size of $50. To me, a porthole is the window on a ship, right? That's
Correct.
A porthole. So, I guess it's... Have you ever seen Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, not Cowboy Bebop. I'm talking about Ghost in the Shell. The character in Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about.
Where his eyes are those two things. Yeah, I think that's what his eyes must have looked like or something, where it's kind of like sunken in, but they're not human eyes.
Right.
You know? The face was elongated, and it's like looking at the side view of a diamond, apparently. And when I read that, I kind of took that as maybe it's multifaceted, where it has different shapes on it or something like that. It had a metallic body that looked like armor, and the bottom kind of flares out. A lot of the drawings have it flared out, but it was lined with thick vertical pipes, which totally screams, I'm a robot.
It sounds like a Dalek. It really sounds like you're describing a Dalek. At
this point, I'm just like, some drunk dude made this thing and then put it out in the woods behind his house to troll the shit out of people or something like that. It definitely does remind me of the guy from Doctor Who, Davros, that actually created all the Daleks.
Who the Doctor saved when he was a young child.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, man.
Cause and effect. Time is a flat circle. Oh, my God. Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
But as with any cryptid, reports on its appearance do vary. Some say that the body is black, while others say it's green. Some say that the thing has small toy-like, I'm going to say T-Rex-like arms, while others say that there are no arms at all. The Flatwoods monster and Frametown monster seem to vary in the fact that in Frametown, from the waist up, it seems to be a reptilian humanoid kind of thing, like a lizard monster, if you may. There's just so much fan art for this creature, and it's both drawn as the Frametown monster and as the Flatwood monster. It's just one is more reptilian looking than the other one, so it just depends. And
this is activating my skepticism now.
Yeah, I don't know, it's kind of overwhelming.
And the town's named Frametown, like, you'd never want to go there because you'd be accused of so much bullshit.
Oh my God, you're so... Or they just like to frame all your paintings.
Doubt it. I mean, they're making up a different version of this monster and renaming it the Frametown monster. I mean, you told me about them second. So to me, they're the usurpers of this story, and I don't like them. That's on you.
So once the group got home, the original mother, Kathleen...
Mountain
Mama contacted local authorities, Sheriff Robert Carr, and some news outlets. So a reporter, Mr. A. Lee Stewart, came out and conducted interviews. And he even went on to say, quote, "Those people were the most scared people I've ever seen," end quote. So these people seem like they're actually scared of what they saw. But Stewart actually co-owned the Braxton Democrat, their local newspaper. So I'm sure he was just like, this is money. We need to get on this right now because you're going to make so much off these articles. Stewart returned to the crash site carrying a shotgun with Lemon later that night. Upon returning to the site, they confirmed that, quote, there was a sickening, burnt, metallic odor still prevailing, end quote. So whatever was making them sick, they could still smell it. It's just so crazy. It's crazy that Lemon went back.
I was going to say, yeah, I can't imagine going back there after that happened.
Authorities went on to search the area, but they couldn't find any trace of the mystery creature that they'd seen the night before. And if this thing actually, to me, if this thing actually did hover, there's not going to be any trace on the ground, you know, of where it went, which is crazy. The next morning, that same reporter returned to the crash site and this time discovered 2 tracks in the mud as well as some thick black liquid. And when I read that, I was like, wheels and a leaking robot, perhaps?
Like oil from the thing's hover chair.
Right.
I just realized what this thing is. It's clearly Frieza in his first form in that stupid chair.
The reporter claimed that it was signs of a saucer having landed on the premises and that there had been no traffic in the area in the last year. Unlucky for him, though, it was later noted that the tracks may have been those of a Chevy pickup truck that had been taken to the site by a local named Max Lockard, who'd gone there to look for the creature hours prior to the reporter's discovery. So it's like, nah, brah, it was someone's truck. Chill the fuck out.
So it probably was actually oil.
Yeah. This whole encounter hit local and national news. There was even a U.S. Air Force UFO inquiry that was part of something called Project Blue Book. I think you've covered that before.
We've talked about it. We haven't gotten deep into it. When I covered the something, the brown lights or something like that. Brown light sounds like poop. Those lights over that one spot, when I covered that, Project Blue Book did research on it too.
Yeah, so this Project Blue Book is a study on different unidentified flying objects. It's just, this whole thing just doesn't sound real. You know what I mean when you think about it? Because the U.S. Air Force studying UFOs, it just doesn't seem legit. But it happened.
Project Blue Book is 100% real,
It happened, yeah. And it was terminated in December of 1969, but I wonder if there's enough information about it to do a whole episode on it, you know?
There is. There's a fuck ton of stuff.
Yeah, I bet there's a whole bunch out there. You could just...
If anything, we should go and dig through the archives of Project Blue Book and just pick out ones? Yes, the more famous ones.
State police didn't seem to take any of it seriously, though. Newspapers reported that they laughed off these reports as hysteria, as the stories of the monster had it go from 7 feet tall to 7 feet tall in the span of 24 hours.
Did you say 7 to 7?
7 to 17.
17 feet tall?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why the police were just like, fuck you.
Well, here's the thing about witness testimony, no matter what happens, is that it's incredibly unreliable. There's a study that they did. It's a lecture hall. I don't know if you've ever seen this video. It's a professor in a lecture hall, and she's talking about how unreliable witness testimony is, regardless of proximity or how quickly you take down the testimony. And as she's saying that, someone comes into the lecture hall, walks over to her desk while she's speaking, grabs her purse, and runs out, just bolts out the door. And one person in the lecture hall, which probably had like 50 to 100 people in it, got up to chase him, and a security guard stopped him, and she said, "This is an experiment. I want everyone to write down right now what they saw. What did he look like? How tall was he? What was his ethnicity? What was he wearing? Everything you can remember about him, write it down." And of all those people in there, I think only 2 got it correct. And both of them were about as far away from the person, like the perpetrator, as they possibly could be.
Wow.
So when you ask a bunch of people, like, what did you see? You're going to get a bunch of variation because people typically don't expect to have to remember details.
Right.
But when something shocking like that happens, what they remember is it was big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when you ask someone for scale, obviously it's going to change based off of how afraid they were.
This thing was 50 feet away from them, so that's a pretty big distance. And trying to measure how tall it was compared to you, that's just not something you can do easily.
A normal person would not be able to have the skill to measure something's distance from 50 feet away. Because like 50 feet away, you could look at someone that's like a foot shorter than you and think they're the same height as you or even taller than you. And then you get close to them and you're like, oh, perspective is a thing. And I couldn't tell.
So after this main event, there were a number of investigations and reports on accounts similar to this one, because, Project Blue Book. Despite local authorities not finding anything, locals still reported seeing strange aircraft apart from what May and Lemon's group saw. So people were still like, I saw this thing, dude. And it's not that they saw the Flatwoods monster, they saw something in the sky. Isn't there a Beatles song or something about touching the sky?
There's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, if that's the one you're talking about. I'd like to take a brief moment. I don't know if I brought this up during the Storytime episode, but I had friends reach out to me who were like, we saw UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
And they were super fucking freaked out about it. And they described it in vivid detail. And the word picture that they painted in my mind's eye was a bunch of lights in a straight row that were slowly like drifting across the sky way too high to be planes. And they were really freaked out about it.
I have never heard her so freaked out before.
Yeah, my friend sent it to me and he told me that they saw this, and I was like, I'm going to need the wife to confirm because I don't believe you. So he sent a video of her saying exactly what he had texted me, and she was freaked the fuck out. And so when I listened to it, I thought, maybe this is a real thing. Let me look in to see what it possibly could have been. The next day, I think there was 150 reported sightings of this particular UFO, and it turns out it was a string of satellites that had been launched by SpaceX. And that's what it actually was. So I don't know if they listen. I know they sometimes watch us live. I think it was shared on Facebook and I tagged them or they tagged me. But it has been determined that it was actually SpaceX satellites. If any of you in the Midwest or wherever else this thing could be seen saw a chain of lights in the sky.
What if Elon is a fucking alien?
He kind of acts like one. So,
right?
Yeah.
He doesn't act like a normal person.
He is an odd guy, but I wouldn't go so far as to call him an alien. Although his desire to return to Mars is a bit suspicious.
What? He wants to return to Mars?
He wants to go to Mars. I just think that it's more likely he wants to return to Mars because he misses it so much.
Wow. He's like, man, those burgers on Mars, you guys gotta have them.
Lame. Lame joke.
Shut up. Fuck you. Okay. So those that have claimed to have seen this or encountered a strange creature also reported becoming sick afterwards. So this thing probably, it's like it's exhaust fumes or something fuck people up. I don't know.
Well, if it crashed, it's also burning. So this is an actual interstellar travel vehicle. Whatever it uses for propulsion or anything inside, who the fuck knows? They could eat arsenic. You know, it could be a completely different creature with completely different makeup. And when it crashed, whatever it had at its dinner table or in its microwave, all of a sudden set on fire and everyone's choking on it down here on Earth. Or it's all fake.
So there was one encounter of a mother and her 21-year-old daughter who claimed that they came across a similar creature with the same icky, lingering smell just a week prior to September 12th. And supposedly, the encounter had such a large effect on them that it left the 21-year-old in the hospital for 3 weeks afterwards.
Wow.
So that's a big thing, you know, when you're hospitalized because of it. The mother of Eugene Lemon reported that her house had been violently shaken and that her radio cut out for 45 minutes when the crash happened. Even the director of the local Board of Education claimed to have seen what he described as a flying saucer take off at 6:30 a.m. the morning after the creature was sighted. That's the freaking head of their Board of Education.
That's pretty crazy, too. It's almost like someone came to get it.
Yeah.
Like, let's get you out of here before anything else happens.
Right.
So what happened to the wreckage?
There was none. There's no actual wreckage. There was a ball of fire that they saw, but there was no wreckage.
So it was like the end of Predator when he tapped a bunch of stuff and started laughing crazily on his wrist.
And the thing just blew up.
Exactly. That's what they were smelling.
The day after the incident, a couple driving during the evening through Frametown, West Virginia, came across something similar, yet seemingly more terrifying. Their car came to an abrupt stop and wouldn't start again. That alone is horrifying. If that happened to me in the middle of nowhere at night, I would freak the fuck out. Soon after their car stalled, they smelled a horrible sulfuric smell in the air. And so they walked around their car hoping to find whodunit, only to come across something straight out of their nightmares. It was a reptilian humanoid creature with the bottom half of a fucking robot. So it was just like same bottom half. It's just the top half was a robot. It was a reptile type thing. And it's thought that these instances are the same creature. And I could see maybe the Flatwoods monster having taken off a helmet or a piece of body armor that he was wearing on top of himself, you know what I mean? And it actually revealed who they really are, which is the reptilian overlords that live in the center of the earth.
I hate you so fucking much.
Why? Why do you hate me?
Because it's not a callback. It's a topic we haven't covered yet.
I know, but it could be, you know?
Sure. I guess so. I wish you could see my face right now. It could be. Anything's possible. I want to believe. # Loch Ness Monster.
All right. So what's interesting is that it hasn't really been cited like creatures like Mothman or Bigfoot have been. It's definitely something that's kept to its little edge of West Virginia. People don't see it all around the world. It's this one sighting, this one incident that's just created such a craze for this Flatwoods monster, you know? And I mean, during this time, it was something that really scared people that lived in the area. There were only about 300 people that lived in Flatwoods, and there's even less people that live there now. It's just this thing that happened to such a small group of people, and they're like, holy shit, dude, this is insane.
Life is old there.
Life is old there?
Older than the trees. Younger than the mountains.
Oh my gosh. So now, Flatwoods is definitely a tourist thing. The Flatwoods monster is just something to sell tchotchkes of. Shout out to my older sister who had to explain to me what tchotchkes were.
Souvenirs, right?
Yeah.
Little shitty souvenirs.
But you do have to keep in mind that 1952 was during the Cold War, and I'm sure they were all worried of atomic bombs and things like that. And this event happened only 3 years after the Soviet Union successfully tested their first atomic bomb. It was probably a constant fear for them that something would happen like that. And so they see something coming out of the sky, and it's just something that would really be scary. And then 1952 was only 5 years after the UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico. So people are still off that alien high, you know? I don't know. There's just so much about it. Fred and Ed, two of the original children to have witnessed the... Why is that funny?
It's just good names. Fred and Ed. You're never going to forget it.
2 of the original children to have witnessed the event are still alive and still stand by what they saw. They no longer talk to reporters because they're just tired of it. They did appear in a documentary titled Flatwoods Phantom, if you guys want to check that out. The U.S. Air Force investigation did turn out, and what they said was that it's just probably an owl. What they saw was probably an owl.
Wow.
And I've never seen a 10-foot owl, okay? I don't understand.
I've seen very few owls, like, in real life, except for the ones that we saw in Japan when we went to the Owl Cafe, which was an amazing moment in my life.
Yeah, it was just, so what they said was that it was just a meteor crash and a surprised giant owl that they saw.
It's a pretty bullshit explanation, I'm sorry.
You guys should totally check Flatwoods out, home of the Green Monster. They've got Flatwoods Monster themed everything. There's like burgers, like different foods, and just a whole bunch of places to go. They have a museum. I definitely want to check it out someday. I think that'd be really cool. I just want to check out West Virginia in general. I think that'd be really fun. But yeah, that's the Flatwoods Monster.
Wow. I had no idea any of that shit. I had heard of the Flatwoods Monster before, but I for some reason thought it was going to wind up being like another swamp creature or another Sasquatch type of creature, so I did not realize the Flatwoods Monster is actually supposedly an extraterrestrial.
I didn't realize it was a robot either, because I have come across the Flatwoods Monster in Fallout 76, and I was like, why is this thing like a robot? I don't understand. And now it all makes sense.
I wonder if there was 2 races actually fighting, and they had a skirmish, and they crashed, and that's why there's 2 different versions of the creature that we're seeing.
Maybe.
They were both wearing, like, a pretty common version of interstellar armor, like, if it was a bulletproof vest for a human, but what was within it was different creatures, like different species.
Yeah.
Or it's all fake. It's really hard to tell, because my mind goes to both extremes, but I don't know. It was a really good story, and you told it really well, so Thank you for that. So, I don't think we have a whole lot else for episode 108, if I'm not mistaken. I think we did a pretty good job with it, though.
Yeah, guys, go pre-order our pins, Hard Enamel pins. We still have pre-orders up on our Etsy shop. Go check it out. Go check out our website, Scaryish.com. Oh, yeah, we have, if you guys want to support us monetarily, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/ScarishPodcast. Or coffee, ko-fi.com/ScarishPodcast. We have a whole bunch of different stuff you guys can check out. Please check out our website. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there as well.
Indeed. If you folks have stories you would like to share with us, especially about tonight's topics,
aliens.
However, not exclusively about it, you can send us any of the other things, paranormal, aliens, true crime, any of that stuff. You can reach out to us via email at storytime@scarish.com. You can also go to our website, scarish.com, and click on Contact Us, or hit us up on any of our social medias, facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Our Twitter is @scarishpod, and our Instagram is @scarishpodcast. We hope to hear from you. It's always fun when you interact with us, especially about the topics that we tell. And I know that I covered a cemetery that a lot of our listeners can go check out if you'd like to. I say be respectful. Make sure you're not doing anything illegal. You can check this place out legally, so maybe look into it. And if you were a part of this infamous crash back in 1952, you're one of the older listeners, but please let us know what's going on with that. Or if you've ever heard anything about it because you live in that region, we definitely want to hear about it. So, yeah. I think that's just about everything that we have. So
have a happy new year. We'll see you guys next year. And
see you guys next decade. Rah, 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 rah.
I said that today after work. I was like, see you guys next year.
It's terrible.
But, yeah. And keep on creeping on. Bye.
Bye.